Well, that certainly didn't go the way I think a lot of people expected that to go. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin, and thank you very much for clicking on this video. Well, the MLB trade deadline is come and gone, right? Some teams, they got significantly better. They added major league pieces. Other teams, they ended up retooling, right, and trying to figure out how they're going to perform better in the future. And some teams, they ended up not doing enough and staying sort of in the middle, where they didn't really change their roster all that much. And I think ultimately, that's where the Red Sox ended up falling, and that's going to make things much more difficult for this Red Sox team going forward. For those of you who missed the exact deadline yesterday, the Red Sox ended up getting starter Dustin May and reliever Steven Matz. Going out from the Red Sox was Blaze Jordan, James Tibbs, and Zach Earhart. Now, in a vacuum outside of the real world here, just simply looking at the exact players the Red Sox got, there are some interesting things here with these packages, right? I think Steven Matz is actually a pretty solid reliever for the Boston Red Sox. I don't hate this trade at all. He's a veteran arm, having a solid season out of the pen. The Sox can always use another weapon in the bullpen. I think if used right, he could be that weapon. I just don't know exactly where he's going to fit here, where they make room for him, those kind of things. It's probably going to end up being either Brennan Bernardino or Chris Murphy, and to be honest with you, that kind of sucks because neither of those guys deserve to be in AAA at this point based on their performance so far. I'm wondering if it's Bernie and they're just going to try and get him some rest off that arm, considering he's one of the most used relievers in Major League Baseball this season, but I think it could also end up being Chris Murphy, who just simply has less experience. Regardless, doesn't matter, right? It creates a whole lot of legitimate weaponized pieces here that you can use coming into the last stretch of the season. I think that's always a good thing to have, right? Too much talent in a bullpen means you have just enough. So I don't hate this Steven Matz trade at all, simply in a vacuum of, hey, these are the trades the Red Sox made. Let's not look at what anyone else did. I also think, some people hate the package for Blaze Jordan. I don't totally hate it. I think that ultimately it was kind of fair value, especially considering where the reliever market was for the Red Sox coming into this deadline. So I really don't totally hate the package either. Dustin May is kind of interesting, right? I mean, you did essentially lose this trade on paper, right? With Steven Matz, I don't think you won or lost. I don't think there was either team that really came out as the bandit in that deal. I think it was a pretty fair trade on both sides. I know a lot of people, the Red Sox don't win a trade, it's a loss, but I think that was a pretty equal trade on both sides. I don't think that it was a pretty equal trade for Dustin May, right? You gave up James Tibbs, you gave up Zach Earhart, and alone, James Tibbs was probably too much for Dustin May, but you added another top 30 Red Sox prospect to get Dustin May on here, and I really don't love the package you gave up for him. And top of that, it's not like you have a ton of control over Dustin May either. You only have the next, 2 months left of Dustin May's contract before he's a free agent, so you're essentially going to be trying to figure him out so he can go into free agency and say, hey, look, I fixed myself. And I hate when the Red Sox do that, especially for guys like this. I would have preferred many of the other options that were available in terms of the rental market here coming into the final stretch of the deadline. It's going to be kind of interesting with Dustin, right? He's marginally better than Walker Buehler. The stats on the paper do not look good for Dustin May this year. He's more experienced than Richard Fitz. So again, on paper, it's a marginal improvement for what the Red Sox had coming into the deadline. And I am kind of curious as to what the pitching staff does with Dustin May. He's a guy who really doesn't need help with his fastball. He really needs help with everything else. The cutter specifically is being absolutely torched this season. His off-speed stuff's okay. It could get a little bit better. And the Red Sox notoriously are pretty good at fixing guys off speed stuff. So maybe there is something here to unlock with Dustin May. Maybe there's a reason why the Red Sox were so focused on him over a guy like Merrill Kelly, who's more proven, or a guy like Charlie Morton, who's had better statistics over the last month or so. Maybe there's a reason Dustin May was their pickup and not one of these guys. It just scares the hell out of me, right? You got a injury-riddled pitcher on a staff that has a ton of injuries already, and a guy who's thrown 108 innings this season. That's more than double the amount of innings he's ever thrown in his major league career. So you take a look at all that, and it's like, okay, this is a little bit terrifying. Maybe there's there's something to pull out of here with Dustin May. On paper, you take a look at what the Red Sox did, and you're like, okay, right? Steven Matz, solid lefty reliever. He's a guy who's going to get lefties out. Fantastic, right? You can use them in a bunch of different ways. You increase the depth in a bullpen, which again, having too much depth in a bullpen is having just enough depth in a bullpen. You get a guy who's marginally better than what you had before, maybe fills out that 5 spot in your rotation slightly better than what Richard Fitz was going to be able to give you. Maybe he ends up being a replacement for Walker Buehler at some point with a ton of potential talent, which is great, but certainly far from a sure thing. On paper, these differences do make your team marginally better, but at the same time, too, you sit there and you say, it's not in a vacuum, right? You have to take into consideration everything else the rest of the league done, and to me, that's where this becomes a bit of a disaster deadline. Now, I really hope this video ends up in 2 months looking like an incredible overreaction, right? I really hope that Dustin May, that talent the Red Sox can pull out of him, and he ends up being a solid mid-rotation pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, because that's really what his ceiling could be. I really hope that Steven Matz ends up becoming an absolute weapon in the Red Sox bullpen, and we're sitting here in October looking back on this video and saying, Corbin, why the heck were you so worried about the Red Sox after the deadline? I hope that happens, but right now, in my eyes, this deadline was an absolute disaster, and it wasn't because of the players you actually got. It's because of the players you weren't able to get. I mean, the Red Sox themselves coming into this deadline, basically since they traded their frontline guy, Rafael Devers, over to the San Francisco Giants, have been saying that they were going to legitimately invest in this Red Sox team, right? That they believed in the roster, that they believed that a good deadline could propel them to being legitimate contenders. And it's not just that they said that they specifically wanted to add a impact bat, and they wanted to add a frontline starting pitcher. Well, you didn't get either of those things, right? So right off the bat, he didn't come to terms with exactly what you said you were going to get at the deadline, which ultimately makes this a bit of a failure of a deadline. But on top of that, you sit there and it's like, okay, well, you looked for Joe Ryan, right? You tried to do that at the very last second, to the point where Yahoo Sports and Fox Sports were actually saying the deal ended up getting done. I think it was just a misreading of John Morrissey's tweet, but those were ultimately put out there, right? So apparently you did try, and Breslow's saying you did try, because after the deadline, he came out with quotes like, we went to this deadline feeling like in order to accomplish what we needed to accomplish, what we hoped to accomplish, we couldn't take some of our young minor league players off the table. We couldn't go into this with untouchables, and we didn't. We were willing to talk about all of our guys in the name of improving this team. It just didn't work out. Or quotes like, if fans were in the office during the deadline, they would see that guys we didn't expect to be willing to talk about going into these conversations were made available. We tried to put the most aggressive offers we could in hopes that they were going to end in deals. I mean, you have Breslow himself admitting that, hey, we didn't get done what we wanted to get done here, right? That last line of that first quote, it just didn't work out, right? How often do you see Breslow just simply admit that he didn't accomplish what he wanted to accomplish? Not very often, right? So you've got him saying, hey, look, we tried our best to get a guy like Joe Ryan, to get a guy who would have changed not only the 2025 season for us, but going forward the rest of the next couple of years as well. But then you got reports from guys like Chris Cotillo, girls like Jen McCaffrey, who were saying they weren't even really close to Joe Ryan. Jen McCaffrey this morning was saying the Red Sox reached out to the Twins, but were unwilling to move any of their big league options or put together a package with their top tier prospects in order to get it done. So I don't really know if you did try your best, Craig, to be honest with you, right? I don't know that you sat there and said, we need to put our balls to the wall here. We need to invest the way that we've been saying we are going to invest for this Red Sox team the way you should have. And I think that ultimately is the answer to why this deadline didn't go the way the Red Sox wanted to. I don't think Craig and the Red Sox were willing to go the extra mile for this team to get it done. And it's surprising to me, genuinely, because this offseason you were able to do that, right? You were able to go and get Crochet. You were able to put your balls on the table and say, look, we're making a big package. We're going to get the guy that we like, and we're going to make it happen. And look how that turned out, right? Crochet's what? The second best starter in the American League, a top 5 starter in Major League Baseball, and you locked that guy up for 6 more years. So it's not like that didn't work out for you, even though you gave up quite a big package to get him. Why couldn't that have happened mid-season? That's what confuses me the most about this deadline. And to make it even worse, it's not like deals weren't getting done, right? There was a ton of movement yesterday, and there was a ton of movement with the teams surrounding you, and this specifically is where I think the Red Sox really faltered. Every team around you in this wild card race got significantly better, I would say, outside of your team. I mean, the Yankees added, 5 different players. They filled a couple of holes they needed to fill. On top of that, they also got 2 legitimate high-leverage names for nothing, really, right? I mean, look at the package they got for David Bednar. Look at the package they sent for Camilo Doval. Those are packages that the Red Sox could have easily matched at the bare minimum, if not beaten pretty quickly, and gotten themselves some legitimate high leverage relief innings, but they didn't end up doing that. They let that happen with the New York Yankees. You sit there with the Seattle Mariners. They got the two best bats available at this year's deadline to add to one of the deadliest pitching staffs in the entire sport, right? Those guys got significantly better. I'm not saying the Red Sox needed Eugenio Suarez or Josh Naylor, although one of those guys would have been nice, right? But I'm saying they watched the Mariners do this and still decided, hey, you know what? We're gonna play this very casually, right? We're gonna be a wallflower here. We're not gonna dive in as much as these other teams are. Even the Texas Rangers, to some degree, got significantly better. I mean, they got the guy that everyone said, hey, this is a perfect match if you're looking for rentals here, Red Sox, right? They got Merrill Kelly. They got that guy. They turned him into a rotation that has DeGrom and Eovaldi in it, and all of a sudden you've got a little bit of a three-headed monster there in Texas. So all of a sudden, every single team around you got significantly better, and the Red Sox, yes, they added pieces, but they didn't get close to adding what the Yankees or the Seattle Mariners or the Texas Rangers got, and that's absolutely terrifying because now all of a sudden, the path to a postseason for the Red Sox gets much, much more difficult, and it's because not of the things that you did bring in, but because of the things that you didn't. Now, does this deadline mean that I don't think this Red Sox team is capable of making a postseason anymore? No, right? I still think that the talent they had 24 hours ago is good enough to get them into the postseason today. I just sit here with this, and it's admittedly, I think you have to admit it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get there, right? You aren't playing the same AL wildcard teams that you were playing 24 hours ago. You're playing different teams that improved their roster significantly in areas that they needed to improve their roster in, and you weren't able to get that job done. If you're a guy in the clubhouse right now, you can't exactly be sitting there rah-rah about the Red Sox and the deadline, right? They couldn't have instilled confidence in the 26 guys sitting in this clubhouse right now, right? They just simply couldn't have done that. These guys have to be sitting there going, okay, we're doing it ourselves. And I actually think the Red Sox as a unit this season have been saying that the entire year, and I don't really think that's going to change their mindset all that much, but it does make it more difficult for them to get in, and that drives me absolutely crazy because you had every opportunity in the world, even if you didn't want to get a Joe Ryan, even if you didn't want to put up what was necessary to go and get a Joe Ryan, you had opportunities to go and get other guys, right? And those opportunities were there, and they're currently on other teams, and they're for packages that would have been very easily digestible, I think, by many, many Red Sox fans to go and get. So you sit here and you talk about it, and it feels like a disaster from this Red Sox team, but at the same time, too, that doesn't, to me, mean that this Red Sox team is out of it. It doesn't mean that you should stop watching, right? It just means that, again, after saying coming into the season that they didn't want to put the hopes and dreams of this season on the heads of young, inexperienced players, that these young, inexperienced players are going to have to be the ones that carry them to a postseason, whether that be a guy like Roman Anthony, whether that be a guy like, say, Don or Willier, or maybe that be a guy like Kyle Harrison or Richard Fitz or Chris Murphy or Greg Weisert or Justin Slayton, right? They're going to have to do that, and that sucks, right? That sucks because that shouldn't be what this season was about. Ultimately, looking at the actual packages the Red Sox got, I truly don't hate it, right? I don't hate that the Red Sox picked up Dustin May. I don't hate that the Red Sox picked up Steven Matz. I do hate what they sent to Dustin May, and I more so hate what they weren't able to do. If we're grading this deadline, if everyone kind of asked, what would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10? It'd be like a 3, right? In grade terms, it'd be like a D- to a D or a D+, somewhere in that D range, right? You kind of got what you sort of wanted, but you didn't get that number 2 starting pitcher. You didn't get that big bat. All you simply got was a solid reliever and a reclamation project. And we'll see again how it works out. And hopefully in a month or two, I'm sitting here and I'm like, why did I even make that video? Like, this is ridiculous. The Red Sox figured out Dustin May and he's a stud. And now they're using Steven Matz as an 8th inning setup guy, right? I hope that happens. But right now it feels like this was a disaster deadline. And it feels like this was probably one of the worst ways this could have gone. I think there are a lot of people who legitimately would say they would have preferred the Red Sox have traded Aroldis Chapman or figured out a way to trade Walker Buehler, find a way to trade Jarren Duran and get something legitimately impactful back who could be an impact this year or next year as well, then they would have been happy looking at what the Red Sox actually achieved this deadline. And I think that's saying something about what the Red Sox actually did. And I'm not alone. ESPN, The Athletic, basically even Lou Merloni, right? All these guys are saying the exact same thing about this deadline. So let me know in the comment section down below, what did you guys think? What would be your ultimate grade on this deadline? And do you think this deadline was as much of a disaster as I'm making it out to be? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton. It's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.